Whoa, dude, this isn't fucking Haven A site? Yeah, that's right. That's right, boys. We're back, and we are talking about split A site and how you can actually hold this alone as a solo player. Because I have noticed that the default setup usually looks something like 2 towards mid and 2 towards A and 1 towards B. But if you are having a lot of trouble holding middle, then it is probably best that you send 3 towards mid and you have 1 vent and maybe 2 upper, just holding the upper push, making sure that the upper player doesn't get overwhelmed. That's mainly if there's not much pressure towards A, and if you happen to have a lot of aggression towards A site, it's best that you know how to properly actually hold this alone. I'm actually an A anchor whenever I play this map, and I play Phoenix, surprisingly. Most people would think Phoenix is very good for playing towards middle, but personally, I think it's a very good idea to have Phoenix either on middle, like playing around middle using flashes to help his team out, or anchoring A site because he has a lot of potential to actually get kills on site. And so let's go over quickly what you can do aggressively and how you can hold passively as well. So if I'm playing Phoenix on A site, right? And I noticed there's not much pressure towards A whatsoever. I have a few options I can make. I can flashbang around this corner if I want to get very aggressive, and I can peek deep and kind of get the info that nobody is here. Or I can even continue on and keep pushing in very quietly. And I can clear out these angles and even potentially flank towards middle. And a very common trend with this map is if they don't touch A, then generally a lot of the rounds, they're just not going to have much presence on A at all. And sometimes they'll not even have a lurker up here, so sometimes you can actually get through here with like a Silva reconning down for you, or, you know, you just taking your bets and pushing up and hoping that there's nobody waiting for you. Now, that's one way you can get aggressive here. When I play Phoenix, a lot of the rounds, if I notice that maybe there's one player here a lot, I will walk up here and I will take a shoulder, or I will just straight up peek this and hold this angle. And if one peeks me, I can take the shot and I can fall instantly to sight and get a better position from there. It's very, very, very imperative that you don't overstay your welcome in this area unless you are playing somebody like Sage, but Sage should be middle. So if you're playing somebody that has like smoke potential, it's okay if you kind of overstay your welcome and then smoke yourself off, but you have to have time to actually use your utility here. You could throw a Molotov, you could throw a Brimstone Molly, and then just walk out. So this is just one way you can play it. If you are playing with a teammate, yes, it's best if you decide to get aggressive that Silva recons this, and if he has his drone even, and he sends it this way, you could actually just push in with the drone after he's cleared out, and then you could actually get very aggressive this way. Just be careful of wires, because wires happen to be in this area pretty often if the enemy team is competent and isn't fucking brain dead. Now, another big thing with the getting aggressive here, it's very important. Like I said, you don't want to overstay your welcome, but once you take your first shot, you need to instantly lead. If there is somebody here, and by the time you actually spot them, to the time that you are running back onto site, they should be able to be rounding this corner. So if you are quick enough, you should be able to just get the fuck out and have enough timing to actually get to a position either on site or back of elbow. And the reason why anchoring is actually good on this map is because you have so many options, right? When you are anchoring on a site, you have a lot of options from here. If you get the aggressive play and you fall back and potentially even get yourself a pick, you can set yourself up on blue box here if you're playing somebody like Phoenix, and you can wait for them to start walking up. You can flashbang and you can instantly peek out, and you can go for like one gunfight. You can fall to here, and then you can keep going and you can just get the fuck out of sight, and you can wait for your team, and you have just secured 1 to 2 picks depending on the situation. You just have to be very smart with this and not overstay your welcome in any of these areas, and you have to be very, very careful with the fights you're taking. You don't want to put yourself in a position to die, yeah, but sometimes it is okay to go for more aggressive peaks like this. If they don't really show much presence here, that is one of the better times to actually go for a peak like this and hold this and then decide to push in. If they do show a little bit of presence here, then it's okay to peek this. But if you have peeked this and you have been spotted, one round, it's best that you don't do it all the time. You can do it like maybe 2 or 3 rounds out of the entire game. If your team, or if they have noticed that you are here, they're going to start expecting it, and they might even post up with like an op or something. So it's very important that you don't do this every single round, because yes, getting aggressive here is a very good way to play this, because I have done this upwards of 20 to 30 times easily, and I have never gotten killed here. I have never once gotten killed here. because all I do is I just hold this angle, and then a lot of the times they won't even be expecting this angle for some fucking reason, and they will just be walking out, and they'll kind of be trained on it, but for the most part they won't be pre-aiming it a lot of the times, which is wrong on their part, because when you're coming in from this angle here, you should definitely be fucking pre-aiming this angle. I always pre-aim this shit. And that's not just me saying it. Like, I always do pre-aim this because a lot of players like to sit here. So, that's just one thing you can do in these situations. Now, if you decide to hold from heaven, it is best done with an operator, because you can get this angle, this far off angle, and you can get a pick. But you can do it with like a Phantom or a Vandal, and you can hold pretty effectively here. Just make sure that your crosshair is lined up in the proper spot, because there is a little bit of elevation right there that you have to take into account. So by the time, just be very careful, because a lot of players will just shoulder you out here, and if you just take a shot, you have given them a site pretty much for free. The only thing you can really do to fight here is to take a fight like this and just hold this angle, or just prevent them from coming up into heaven. Those are really the only things you can do from heaven if you are solo on the site. But it is okay to do this if you are soloing site. The big thing about playing solo anchor site is you are not there to get kills. You are not there to stop a push. You are there for information and information alone. But if you can secure kills, you have done more than your job's worth. You have done way more than you should have done in the position that you are in. And that's why going for frags in these situations can be good on occasion, but you don't want to do it all the time, because if you're doing it every time, they're going to start predicting you and they're going to start killing you, and your team is going to be at a massive disadvantage if you aren't able to secure kills and you aren't able to get out. Just make sure that either you get out of the site or you take at least one down with you and you make it an even 4 versus 4, and you have to make sure that you are communicating the entire time that there are people potentially coming. Now, what you can do is, if you're Brimstone, you can smoke here, and you could take, you know, just a little bit more aggressive, and you could just hold here, just hold behind the smoke, wait for the smoke to fade. You could tap the orb, try and bait something out. You could grab the orb even, but grabbing the orb is very risky if you don't have a teammate watching you here. But if there is a lot of pressure towards other areas, it's okay to probably bait it and then grab it. But you just have to be very careful about lurkers. I have run into a lot of lurkers on a site. The last game I played, there was this fucking brain dead Sova that almost every round, at about 30 seconds into the round, he would push out here like this. Almost every single time. And all I had to do was stand on site and wait. Just wait like this. Just hold an angle on him, because he was going to walk into my crosshair. And he didn't almost every round. So you just have to be very careful about lurkers, because lurkers will come through a site very often, trying to get into heaven, into ropes, and hitting you guys in the back. So be very careful about lurkers when you are soloing a site. And if you are soloing the site, it is imperative that you actually have visual on this chokehold. If you do not have visual on this choke, you need to tell your team as soon as possible. If they smoke off main, you need to communicate that, because that means they can get into heaven if you are the only one here playing on site. You have to be very careful, very, very careful about situations like this. Now, holding from elbow is very good. You can hold from elbow, but it is smoked off very often. But you can hold from elbow, and if you have some sort of utility to get you out, you can easily leave, or you can continue on to fight from this area here. What I like to do a lot of the times if I'm playing Phoenix, so this is what a round on Phoenix would look like for me. A general round is I will take this aggressive peek here, and if I spot something, I will fall back. I'll communicate to my team. I'll be like, they're coming in fast. Please rotate. And then I will fall to this box. I will use my sound, and I will listen, and I will flash this side, and I will instantly take gunfights. But it's very important that you don't flash from this side, because once you take the gunfight and you flash from this side, and you're sitting there spraying, all you can do is fall to this box, and they can easily rush you down. You could potentially throw a wall up here. I've made this mistake where I've gotten stuck and I've peeked on this side instead of this side, and you get stuck very easily, right? You have to throw this here, or throw another flash, and actually get out and run all the way over here. And by then, you don't have any more flashbangs, because you already used one for a peek, and you already used one to get yourself out, or you used your wall, and it's very difficult for you to actually get out without the use of your wall. Just be very wary of what side you're peeking, because if you peek from this right side, as you can see, I can peek out, right? And I can take maybe one gunfight, and if I feel like I'm about to lose the gunfight, or if I get one kill, I can easily just walk out here, and I can go to CT and wait for my team, or I can potentially work my way around site if there's like smokes down here, and I can just kind of wait around the smokes and wait for my team to come. And then I have this position secured so my team can actually get into this site effectively. So soloing site it comes down to three main things: how aggressive you're getting, how passive you're playing, and what information you're relaying to your team, and what you are doing for your team. Whether you are getting kills, whether you are giving the information required to get your team to rotate quickly, and then at least holding on to a little bit for your team so they can actually retake pretty effectively. And I don't think, did I say three main things? Because I said a lot more than fucking three main things. But these are some of the main things you should really consider when you are soloing sites. And this goes for pretty much every site that you play solo. It's going to come down to these things, right? You just have to be very careful about the information you are not only giving the enemy team, but the information you are relaying to your team. You have to be very cautious and make sure that you don't get your full team to rotate if there's only one fucking guy here. You have to be very certain in your calls, and you have to be very certain in the plays you make. Playing solo on sites is very difficult, and it takes a lot of time to actually understand how to do it properly, because I see a lot of players that will solo a site, and pretty much every time the enemy team goes to that site, they just fucking go down. They die. Bullet to the brain, it's over, right? So just make sure you're playing it smart, make sure you're giving info to your team, and make sure you are able to not only set yourself up for kills, but you are able to get out alive. And getting out alive generally will be much more important than actually setting yourself up for kills. But if you feel like you can balance the round out even more by getting kills, even if you might die, then sometimes that is the right move to make. Alright, I know I talked really fast in this video, but there was a lot of information I wanted to cover and a lot of things about playing this that I wanted to cover. I didn't really go over much for utility usage, but I mainly went over stuff about how you could actually play on the site. If for utility usage though, if you're playing like Brimstone, what I would do for Brimstone is I'd once again hold this aggressive angle every once in a while, and if I saw something, I would molly it and then throw a smoke down and then just kind of wait outside the smoke. And if nothing else happened, I'd wait a little bit before throwing my next smoke down. Basically all you want to do if you are soloing is delay, right? Just delay, try and bait out the utility if you can, and try not to get overwhelmed. So I'm not going to go over much for utility because there's not much to say for utility for most of the characters. It's pretty obvious. You should just be smoking the choke and making sure you're not blowing all your utility right at the start without any presence. If you are playing solo, it's very important that you don't blow all your utility at the start. If you hear footsteps, go ahead and throw your utility. But if you don't hear anything and you don't have any presence whatsoever, then do not use your utility because you will be wasting it potentially. And you might need it later in the round if they decide to come back towards a site. So that's all I wanted to talk about. And I'm not talking about any positions really you can play. I pretty much told the main way that I play on it, but there are other options you can play. Really quickly, I'll go over some positions, I guess. You don't want to play under here because this is a one and done angle. There's almost no way for you to get out alive. You can maybe get one kill, but you will die. Playing elbow is fine. It's great because you can actually get the fuck out very easily. Playing blue box or this elbow area is good. Just be very careful that you don't get rushed down from this side when you're trying to exit the site. Playing CT is also good, but it's generally smoked off. Now, playing Heaven and actually securing Heaven for your team is very important as well. If you decide to play the Heaven route, you are giving them access to a site though, and that is the only thing you have to be aware of. You are giving them a site, and they could go in through CT if your team isn't quick enough on the rotate. So playing Heaven is fine, and denying this access for your team or for the enemy team, so your team can actually rotate through ropes and rotate through CT is very good. But generally it is very hard to hold if you are alone. That's the big thing, because there's not much cover here. All you can really do is play maybe here. For the most part, you can maybe play like right here, or you can play even deeper, but then that gives them access to ropes. So you really only have a few positions to play here. You can play here, but you probably aren't getting out of this alive. You can play back here behind that cover, or you can play ropes right here, and then if you really need to fall out, you can kind of wait for your team, and you can just keep holding this, waiting for your team. So those are some of the ways you can play it. I don't really have much to say about Heaven, because Heaven is, yes, it's a good spot to hold if you want to play a more passive way of like holding onto the A site, but you are just giving them a site. The only thing you're denying is Heaven control, which is indeed important because you need your team to actually come back and fucking assist you. So Heaven control is important, but in my personal opinion, playing on site is it's a pretty good way of actually holding on to A, because it gives you a lot of time and it gives you a lot of information, and you can actually get out way easier than you can on Heaven. There are a lot more positions you can play and a lot more positions you can actually mix up with, and there's a lot more pick potential in this area on A site than there is in Heaven. So yeah.